Cell phone charger's back here if you need one.
Awesome, thank you.
You're very welcome.
You having a good day?
I am. Thanks for asking. Yeah, so far so good. It's beautiful, nice weather.
Oh yeah, no, the past couple of days, a storm not too long ago.
Yeah, it's great. You going out to do something fun, or?
I'm going back to school.
Back to school,
Yeah.
okay. What do you study?
I'm in med school right now, so I'm currently in med research here doing work on Parkinson's.
Oh, Parkinson's, okay. Is that kind of what you want to tackle as a focus? Or do you
Yeah,
have...
so I want to go into neurosurgery.
Okay.
And so my focus is on pretty much understanding like different neurons that affect it. And
Wow.
we're right now working on, we're in clinical trials right now with like my boss pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to work on a better drug for it.
Wow.
And like being able to detect it earlier on so you can have more positive impact.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because that's really got to be super important if you can get ahead of it.
Yeah,
It seems like
exactly.
a lot of things. Early detection really helps
Mhm.
a lot. Yeah. Oh, that's very cool. So you neurosurgery, that's brain, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Is there any particular reason you wanted to go towards that field? Like, did something in life motivate you, or?
So the first like doctor I ever met, so one of my friends, his dad is he works in the trauma department in his hospital, and so he got me in touch with a pediatric neurosurgeon.
Wow.
And so
okay.
like that was like the first like true like medical encounter I had as a kid.
Wow. Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like the brain's very cool, and
Yeah.
like the stuff he does, it's like a very good impact on people,
Absolutely.
and just like meeting like different kinds of people, like seeing your actual like work have a life-changing impact. And
Right, right. Yeah, because if somebody's going in for neurological surgery, there's
Yeah.
obviously something pretty bad
Mhm.
happening. So yeah, you're right. It's like, and that's a immensely skilled type of
Mhm.
surgery, right? It's
Oh,
very,
yeah.
it's very specific, really hard to do, because we understand so little about
Exactly.
the brain. So yeah, no, that's really interesting stuff. What's something that like surprised you in your field, where you're like, oh, this is how that works? I had no idea this was going to go that way.
So it's that. So like what we thought we knew about Parkinson's. So like the stuff we're doing, like I've only been on it for about a year, and like we're the first research lab to start on it in the world.
Uh-huh.
And so it's that there's like two main chemicals that go into it. The neurotransmitters. It's acetylcholine and dopamine.
Yeah.
So everyone knows dopamine. It's like the happy
Yeah.
neurotransmitter. Every time you do something good, it's like a reward thing. You feel good about it,
Makes you
and
keep going,
and it makes you keep doing it.
motivational, yeah.
And then if you do something bad, you lose it, and so you're like, okay, I don't do this again.
Yeah.
And so like it helps with athletes, like even day-to-day tasks like brushing your teeth.
Oh yeah.
And so the thing is, everyone thought like that's all that matters, and that's what's the main impact on Parkinson's.
Mhm.
But what we found is that dopamine doesn't control itself; it's controlled by another molecule
Yeah.
called acetylcholine.
Okay.
And so if you can control acetylcholine production, you can also control dopamine production, and so that's what we focus on.
Interesting. Okay, so for Parkinson's, because is that like a dopamine affected disease?
Yeah,
Like okay.
it's almost purely dopamine, and so what we're trying to do is we're trying to increase acetylcholine production
Uh-huh.
in neurons in your brain,
Mhm.
and then if you increase that enough, we've seen that in mice so far that it also increases dopamine a little bit.
Sure.
And so
okay.
if we just make a specific, we inject a specific virus that makes dopamine neurons more sensitive,
Okay.
and so they're more likely to release more dopamine in Parkinson's than regular. And so if we increase acetylcholine, it's like a two-step
Sure.
solution almost.
So increase the acetylcholine
Exactly.
and then make the receptors more
Sensitive to it.
Sensitive to it. Sure.
So you get Parkinson's patient with more normal levels of dopamine.
Yeah, they're gonna have a higher effect from what they
Mhm.
do have. Plus, it's being created more.
Exactly.
That's really interesting stuff. Yeah, that's a great way to kind of tackle it in a mitigation point, right?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily treating the root cause, but you're like, okay, this is something.
Exactly,
we
and
can
it also
use
like
that.
alleviates a lot of the medications they'd be on, because that's like another like big thing, because like people with like neurological disorders have to take pills on pills. Like epilepsy is a big one.
Yeah.
Like they take like 8-9 pills a day,
Oh wow.
and so it's like to give them more of a normal life. Like
Sure.
you don't have to be dependent on like, okay, it's been 1 hour, like I have to take another pill, otherwise,
Yeah, you're like, here, you can take this. This is a little more long lasting.
Yeah.
It's taking that down.
Exactly.
And like you said, more normalizing
Mhm.
life. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's too easy to take being healthy for granted.
Exactly.
But it's like that's a thing that's what's the word for it? It's temporary.
Mhm.
Everybody at a certain point in time eventually gets down there.
Yep.
It's just how long that goes until you do. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's a great field to get into. and I look at dopamine as obviously like the biohacker version of it. That's the way I look at it. It's like, what can you do to increase cold showers and all that stuff.
Exactly.
Wake up, look at the sun as soon as you wake up, all that stuff to increase for a normal person.
Yeah.
But it's like Parkinson's, there's an actual disease happening now. So is it that their body isn't producing the acetylcholine?
So what their body's doing is it's like their immune system's pretty much killing off their dopamine neurons, thinking it's like an invasive virus because they don't have the right antibodies to protect against it.
Sure.
And so there's a couple, like we've also found that there's a couple genes in their DNA that are just turned off.
Okay. Oh, interesting.
And it's like the same concept of like how some people are more likely to get cancer.
Yeah.
Because there's a specific gene called a tumor suppressor gene. And that pretty much prevents your body from getting cancer.
Okay.
And people have like 2 copies of it, and then elephants have 20.
Oh, wow.
So that's why elephants don't get cancer, because if something happens to one, they still have 19 backups.
Sure.
But for people, it's only 1 backup.
Wow.
And so we found that there's a specific gene called we call it GPA1. And if you have it suppressed, pretty much, it increases your likelihood of Parkinson's.
Oh, okay.
And so it's like a new form of detection. So like we've been able to detect it in mice like before they're born.
Yeah.
And like based on their parents' like genotype and all that.
Okay, so
and
some predictability.
Some predictability, and then being able to get like the mom on medications early on that get to the baby and the fetus before it's born, and so like they're more normalized when they're born, and they don't deal with like prenatal like seizures or anything.
Yeah.
And that's what we've been working on. So now it's a process of trying to get more concrete data on it, just so we can translate it more into a clinical side and not more so like lab.
Sure, that's interesting. And a lot of people think of Parkinson's as something that sets on with age.
Yeah.
But but that's interesting to say pre-birth you can actually predict it. So that gives you a huge window of time to work in. That's really interesting.
Yeah. And we're like studying symptoms too about like, okay, like this, like we use like very high-speed cameras with mice, and we can detect like subtle changes like down to like the micrometer.
Oh wow!
In like their differences in like their ability to like move around, grab things, and then we compare that to like a normal healthy mouse, and we see that okay, like this is a symptom that's often ignored, but because especially in children, like if you go like you get like a regular checkup, like children are most of the time like non-compliant with doctors.
Right.
So most of the time doctors overlook it being like, oh, it's childish behavior, but sometimes it's actually a symptom that's overlooked or like neglected.
Sure. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So we're trying to get that, like finding more concrete ways to analyze it.
Sure. To say here's a test for it. Here's what you're seeing.
Exactly.
It's not that they're grabbing slower because they don't want to do it. It's because the signals being interfered
Exactly.
with. Now, because if it's an immune response, does that mean like immunosuppressants, do those help kind of prevent the onset of Parkinson's?
Not really. So it starts off as an immune, but then it automatically becomes more so like your body just starts making it as a whole. And so like by the time you like detect it, like okay, like we can get you on immunosuppressants, but by the time that happens, then you're at risk for getting like other diseases because your immune system completely shut down. And so it's like it's a big trade-off that most of the time isn't worth it.
Sure, I can see that. Yeah.
So
it's not a good way to tackle it because you're weakening the defenses. Of the human. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then like early detection is important too because you don't see it in adults until like it's unlike adults until like they're like past their like midlife point, like 40, 50 years old usually. Yeah. And up until then it's like a natural progression, and then just hits and everything just goes bad.
Right.
And so if you detect it early, you can get them on the right treatment, and then by the time they get there, you pretty much delay the onset of it, or even just weaken the like symptoms to such a degree that it's negligible in their life.
And that's pretty amazing to be able to do something like that. That's great, because Parkinson's, it was something that just happened, and then it became a disease that was named, and now it's something we're understanding. And so that's great. So I'm trying to think, like, what are the earliest cases of Parkinson's in people that they knew what it was or what was happening? It's been around for a while, right?
Yeah, no. So like new like technology now, like they're estimating that. So like obviously, the better detection means like the cases are going to go up. Right. So like if you could just compare in the past 10 years, like if you look at 2010, there were, I think, an average number of like 50 or 60,000 Parkinson's patients in the country, and now there's over like 1 million, just because there's better detections, and they're estimating that like by 2050, their detection's going to be so like innovated and like advanced where you can detect it, that there's going to be like 40 or 50 million cases, just because they're going to be like, okay, this kid's going to develop it by the time he turns 50. So now we can classify him as a Parkinson's patient and get him on the right medications.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, and like use if it's at 40 or 50 million, that's it. Over 10% of the population of people, and then it can turn into something like, this is something you can do. That's really interesting, and that's great. Yeah, getting ahead of it then. That's really cool. Yeah, the human mind, it's so fascinating. I'm constantly learning about it. It's really interesting. And there's so many, I'm a mechanic by hobby. I like working on cars. It's that same way of like, there's so many fuel systems that people have. So many things that like, this is integral to a person to function. And that's a big one, obviously, is dopamine.
That's how I got into like really into cars, just because it's like it relates so much to the brain. Like car engines and stuff. Like I watch YouTube videos just like people like taking apart car engines, putting them back together.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, see, cars and computers and the brain, all the same thing. That's when I'm working on computers, I see the same thing. It's like, well, this is the brain, this is the heart, this is how it all puts together, and you think of it like an organism that way. So that's really cool. Yeah, and I agree. That's how I like to think of it. Oh, that's super cool. So how far along are you in your study?
This is my first year.
Oh, okay, cool. So you're just getting that. And you're already working at a company. So did you do like the pre-college and now you're in med school then?
Yeah, so I did like my bachelor's, and so now I work for Michigan Medicine, so like the University of Michigan's hospital system. And so I'm employed by them, and then I also work with the NIH, so like the National Institute of Health. With my and that's where like most of our funding comes from.
Okay. That's great. Yeah, and it makes sense that it's a national thing, because it's like this could potentially be a huge chunk of people. And
we try to like collaborate with as many like other universities as possible. Just because we might come up with something and then someone else might be able to disprove it, but we would never know because everyone's just trying to do their own thing. And so we try to be as transparent as possible with this.
That's great. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about that. It's crowdsourcing, right? That's really the key to our success as humans is cooperation and working together. So if we can crowdsource medical data, like you said, we're going to save 50 years of going down the wrong thing if somebody had already disproved it. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Yeah, and that's why I like the university medical systems are really great for research in that way, because all they care about is sharing the info. They're not doing it for profit. They're not trying to make something that only they can sell.
Because I think about a month ago we helped disprove another lab at Stanford University, and so now they just completely abandoned their project and then rethought their design and experiment process and they probably saved like six to 9 months of time, and then also I think they estimate that they save about $200,000 on like R&D and just like equipment they would need just to find out something's just wrong.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. Because that's why you cooperate. That makes a lot of sense. And there's like, I'm sure somebody was like, I created this, I wanted this to work, and right? It's like, well, it didn't. It just didn't go that way. But it's better in the long run for us as a species.
And like we get like information from other schools all the time. And so it's just like, that's why I like the whole university structure, just because no one is there for a profit. Like all our fundings come from the government, and we all make about the same amount of money from it.
And it's just here for the betterment of us as a species. Which, that was another thing I was talking to this person about, because like if you look at all of Earth, right, humans have existed on planet Earth for like 1.2 million years or something like that. And like, when did we start studying the brain, right? Not that long ago. Like we just started figuring this stuff out. So it's very new. So this is cutting edge of like, how do we work? How do we operate? Why do we work that way? And the university system kind of gives us the way to study it, to research it, to collaborate, to share, and to say these guys are focusing on that, we're focusing on this, and these things correlate in some way. And the whole idea is, well, eventually we'll get something that benefits all of humanity. And I think that's really phenomenal.
It's very interesting stuff.
so I love when we get to learn stuff. Like I was reading about kind of going into genealogy.
Yeah.
There's, he, I think, was a professor. He's about to retire, but he's going to still keep working. He found a gene therapy to cure disease. And that's kind of in a similar vein to what you guys are talking about. It's like this is a disease that's caused by a specific set of genes. So a gene therapy could potentially mitigate that in the future, which is really amazing stuff.
And like the better quality of like treatment we get out, the cheaper we can make it.
Exactly.
Like brand new stuff that like only one place comes out with, it's like it's gonna be hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Because like when like the initial Parkinson's meds came out, they used to cost like $20,000.
Oh yeah.
Like every 3 months.
Yeah. Oh.
And like no, like eventually insurance companies are gonna stop paying it, and then you know that leads to bankruptcy, and like you have to choose between like paying rent, eating food, or like living a normal life.
Exactly.
That's why like I'm big on the university system, because like we all come out with something similar around the same time, and then it's just like mass produced at that point. So like nobody can privatize it.
And that's so important. So important. I was just talking to somebody yesterday who's going through chemotherapy, and she came from the UK to the United States, and it's completely different. Obviously, healthcare over there is not tied to your job; you just get it. But she's over here, and she's having to deal with that system. And I talked about how unethical and immoral it seems to me that you control people's well-being, where it's truly like die or pay this. Those are your options, and it's like that to me seems unethical.
No, it definitely is.
Nobody chooses to get sick. Nobody chooses to have this happen to them, and they're stuck with it. And it's really unfortunate. I think we'll get in a better place. We just have to take the time to get there. But until then, we still have to have advancements. We still have to keep thinking. When did we discover genetics as a thing in the first place? We had eugenics, which was like, it's been like 200 years old, 300 years old with dogs and stuff like that. So I guess that's kind of when we understood that genome was a thing, or something could be manipulated. But then when did we figure out like the double helix? Like when did we say,
that was like the 1960s, so it's like very, very new.
Very new. And do we have the genome mapped completely?
We've had it mapped for about, I think, 30 or 40 years now.
Okay.
It's just a matter of like individually going in and understanding which genes we can knock out, and also the ethics behind it. Like we can manipulate a mouse's DNA, and that's completely fine.
Sure.
Because mice live for our mice live for about 1 to 2 years. And they grow up fast, they die fast, and then we only map their genome before birth, and we like study their DNA after they die.
Okay.
So we maintain like the ethics of like, you know, animal treatment. But then for a human, like there's a conscience you gotta consider. There's like
as a person,
the ethics behind it. Like, okay, like can we really like, you know, analyze a baby just for the purpose of science? And like,
because you're not allowed to experiment on kids.
Exactly.
So you can't do it, at least in America. Because I know in China, didn't a researcher get in trouble for that, where he created like 4 genetically manipulated humans?
Yeah.
And just sent them out there, like, we don't know where they're at, right?
Exactly.
Yes. That's a thing. We don't necessarily want that, but you know, who knows? And I think he was just like, this will either be great or not. Because wasn't it the genetic thing was they can't get AIDS, right? Like that was, So okay, all right. Well,
it's same thing with like stem cell therapy, pretty much, because the only way you can get stem cells like that are like successful to helping adults is from the placenta and like the embryo or the umbilical cord or like a fetus, and like harvesting them is very painful for like a child,
right?
Because you have to go. It's a spinal tap pretty much, and so like the ethics behind that is questionable. And then if you want to go through the umbilical cord, you have to go through like, you know, the womb of a pregnant mother. And so it's like, is that ethical? Even if she consents, like, can you go about doing it, harvesting stem cells, and then you don't know the outcome of what the baby's going to be because you're taking away its immune system pretty much.
Exactly. Yeah, because that's necessary. There's a big dump of immunosuppressant or helpful stuff, you know. And like when my daughter was born, we did that. We did the cord blood banking, so they took some of it out and said, okay, we're going to keep this if she needs stem cells in the future. And it's like, okay, fine, there's some helpful, but it's like there's a lot of stuff that's supposed to be going into the body.
Exactly.
At that point that you know, that's part of the dump, and that's what they need. Like somebody said, it was like, it is like a dump of all of these things. And it's like, you need this to survive, but now we're going to take it out. So that's probably not a good idea. Which kind of, you know, I was talking to or listening to a podcast with Penn Jillette, where he's talking about circumcision kind of in the same way.
Yeah.
It's like, these are babies. These are brand new babies. You're not supposed to cut anything off of them.
Yeah.
You're just not. These are humans. You got to let them develop. So, yeah. And that's kind of the same thing with cord blood, with all that. I've been reading about, because I'm getting old, obviously, so I want to live forever. So I've been reading about, doing T-cell therapy, or that cell therapy for like joints and all of that stuff. And they say like you can get it from the blood, like you can take the blood, spin it, do platelets, but you're saying it's not quite the same, it's not as effective?
Yeah, because the thing is, like, you have the most amount of like stem cells when you're like right before you're born, and they like differentiate into every cell in your body.
Sure.
And then when you grow up, your body's like, I don't need all these stem cells, so it localizes them to specific parts of your body.
Sure.
So like in your knee, for example, it'll only proliferate into knee like joint cells, and then after a while it'll just be like, we don't need stem cells anymore, so it'll kill them all off.
Wow.
And so it'll only just replicate cells you already have, and eventually you get to a point where it can't replicate anymore and just dies.
Sure.
So one of my friends, what she's doing is they take blood from your own body, and let's say like your carotid artery or something, a little tap of blood from there, and since that blood's going to your brain, it's cycled in like important neurotransmitters and chemicals that your other parts of your body don't have access to.
Sure.
And they'll inject that into patients with like osteoarthritis in their knees or like osteoporosis, and then it's shown to help them with joint recovery, with like pain and stuff.
Sure, I can see that. That makes a lot of sense.
Because you're giving them more nourishing blood that they usually won't have access to.
Right,
and
that's for the brain, man. That's what put your knee. But
so it's shown to help a little bit, but it's still very like new and like they're still like working to make sure there isn't any dangerous side effects with it yet.
Right, yeah, because who knows what those could be. And then on top of that, what's the supply? Because that is supposed to go to the brain. The brain probably had a point, was like a purpose for it. So that's interesting. But I could see how that would be beneficial. So I remember I read somewhere where like there's your teeth have some sort of stem cells on them too.
Yeah. That's why like when they say like your teeth like die out, like you can't, like you only get 2 sets of teeth. And like once you get your adult teeth, and like you want to make sure you take care of them. Yeah. Because your body stops producing that kind of cell.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and like for example, like sharks have infinite teeth pretty much,
right?
Because they have a different genetic map that lets them keep producing their teeth, but their teeth aren't as hard as ours.
Yeah, and they don't get same thing. They don't get cancer or tumors also for the same. They've got just different genes. So then the question is how do we tap into those genes in an ethical way to maybe create more stem cells, have those not be a thing that go away, and we really don't have anything for them as of yet. That's where you're working on it. You'll get there. Maybe sometime in your 40s or 50s you'll figure something out. I will be 90 by then, so it's not totally going to help me out. But my grandkids might benefit from it, so great, that's fine.
No, but what we've also found is, so like I used to play soccer at the University of Michigan, and so we had a psychiatrist that would have to meet with the entire team, like all the teams meet with them. Sure. And what she found is that you can rewire your brain to like live a more healthy life just by doing like very small things. Like instead of brushing, like if you're righty and you brush your teeth with your right hand every morning, you switch to left hand for a couple weeks, and then like small things like that, like instead of like always driving with your right hand, drive with your left hand. Like putting your tying your shoelaces a different way, like small things that are like habits. If you change those little habits to use the other side of your body, like if you're right dominant, you do more left based things, it rewires your brain to such a degree it creates like new neural pathways and releases more like important chemicals in your brain that actually help with this like your overall health.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I was learning about that too, like neuroplasticity.
Exactly.
And they were talking about people that tend to live longer are the people that started a new career in their 30s because it forced essentially that. It forced them to learn more, forced them to be neuroplasticity. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So you can kind of intentionally add that kind of stuff in, and then you're going to be doing those a little more, which makes a lot of sense.
Like I used to, if you know JJ McCarthy.
Not familiar with him.
Yeah, he's the quarterback of the University of Michigan football team, and he's in the NFL draft this year. Okay. And I used to tutor him, and like we got close.
Oh, nice.
And so he used to say like every morning he meditates, and in his meditation he'd always switch up. He maintained the same routine, but then after that he'd he started brushing with his left hand for 2 weeks and switched back to his right hand. And then he'd like maintain the same routine but change up which hand he uses things for. And he said it made him a better quarterback. And like he has never felt healthier. And like he dealt with a lot of like ankle issues. And then he started changing his habits like that.
Yeah.
And it stopped him from like getting injured as much. And
Sure.
like we talked to doctors and like I talked to a psychiatrist, and she said that the reasoning behind that is you're forcing your body to change.
Yeah.
And it prevents stagnation.
Yeah.
And so that also like keeps your immune system active because your entire body's being activated that way.
Right.
Because your brain is like the control center for everything. And so if you're activating your entire body at once, then you're more likely to stay healthy.
Oh yeah, and that makes perfect sense because it's almost like your body's doing something new, so it's going to want to, and it's going to the keeping healthy becomes a secondary thing.
Exactly.
Because it's like, well, we need to do this, so we'll do that also.
And it never lets your body take a break for its immune system.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I might have to start switching. I'm lefty, so I'll just start doing everything right-handed, I guess. Because that makes a lot of sense. So with the meditation, did he switch up what he was doing to meditate?
Yeah, he used the same posture and everything, but like what he'd like speak to himself in his mind, what he'd think about, he'd change on a day-to-day basis.
Sure.
And he'd just actually try to manifest everything he wanted to do in his day, like mentally map everything out.
Oh, okay.
But he wouldn't be fixated on like if from 8 to 9 I have to eat breakfast. He'd be like, okay, like if it didn't happen, okay, I understand. I can rewire my day.
Yeah.
So like not being completely fixated on a schedule, but being like mentally flexible with it.
Sure.
And like having like the subconscious and conscious acceptance that I'm a human being, I'm imperfect, I'm gonna make mistakes, and that is perfectly fine with me, and I can use this moment as a point of growth, pretty much.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And meditation is a great practice in the first place, but then kind of adapting it more, and making it so that it's adapting. That's really great. But it seems like he's interested in health and healthy practices in the first place. So that's pretty cool. So it looks like here.
Yeah, on the left, the Greyhound station. I can cross the street.
Oh, Greyhound. Okay. All right. Hold on. I'll pop over for you here. Let's see. All right. Here you are. It was great talking to you.
Awesome. Thank you. Same.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Have a great day.
There's also a good book if you ever want a new read. It's called The Laws of Human Nature.
Love it.
By Robert Greene, and he's a psychiatrist.
Oh yeah, I've read Robert Greene. He did like The Laws of Power or something. Yeah. He's a great author.
Yeah, this
a lot
is
of great stuff.
Next,
Nice. I'll check it out.
To understand human nature.
Nice. I'll check it out. Thank you so much.
Have a good day.
Have a good one.